So we continue with that. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme announcing that it has received a record number of first-time applications. This year there are 543,268 applicants compared with 429,000 the previous year. The jump reflects a growth of about 26%. NSFAS says it's prioritized poor and vulnerable students following an extensive outreach campaign. Students in the Free State complained to the SABC that their fees from last year still hadn't been paid. NSFAS Administrator Dr. Randall Carolissen joins us now for more. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Dr. Carolissen. Let's start with that issue of students in the Free State. Are you aware of it?
I'm aware of a number of students at Free State, UJ and UWC who complained that they did not get issued their results because NSFAS did not pay. Now, that's not true. That's absolute hogwash because we paid the institutions last year in November. All the money is due to them, and we are reconciling the amounts that are still outstanding, which is relatively small. So the money is there, and therefore, it was quite interesting this morning. I was on a radio show, and a UJ student called in and said that UJ refused to give him his results. And I said that can't be because we guarantee and we have made the payments to the institution. Subsequent to that, I called the Deputy Vice Chancellor of UJ and she said that should not happen. So obviously somebody...
So it should not happen, meaning that is not the ideal scenario, but it's possible that it is happening, but it's not the correct way of handling.
It's not the correct way of handling because the MOU that we have for the universities is that they must release NSFAS students' results because we have paid for them. And so it's obviously there's some disconnect between what we've agreed at the top level and what's happening at the interface.
So it could be an administrative issue, as you say.
But they did promise to look into that. The UWC's Vice Chancellor said that they will look into it and they'll correct it this week still.
Okay. So I want to just bring up some of the tweets that we've been getting because there are students who've had quite a lot to say. Let's start with this one. Kay saying, my experience is my application has been stuck on financial eligible awaiting academic results for some time now. What is your response to this one? So
what this means is that you are eligible for funding for NSFAS, but you will only become funded once we receive proof that you are registered at an institution. So this student is actually in a good space. When he or she goes to the institution, and they will pick up, because we have a very effective data exchange between us and institutions, when they pick up that the student is NSFAS eligible, the student will not be required to pay an upfront fee or a registration fee, because they will pick up that it's a NSFAS student. So that situation will remain until such time that we receive proof of registration. So that student's actually in a very good space. That student's been approved.
So just for the benefit of those who, and I'm going to assume that there are people possibly who have been living under a rock or who just don't know what it means to be eligible. So just take us through that again.
So what has happened, let me take the 540,000 students that we received last year. So our staff work right through the Christmas period. So in that time, we check their financial eligibility or the SASSA status. And if you are a SASSA beneficiary, and at the age of 18 you received SASSA, we go back to your age of 18 and say, this was a SASSA child, if I can use that word, and therefore this person is eligible. That person gets a tick on our portal, on their portal, that you are eligible, and that status will then reflect. If your salary is under 350,000, your household income, you get a tick after we've validated that, and we of course need your consent form to validate that, and then you become eligible. So we have so far declared of the 540,000 students, 400,000 that are of the new students are eligible. So the 400 students will have that status reflected.
I need to ask this question. What happens if your financial circumstances have changed? And this is only literally recently, in the past month or two.
So what we do, where we find students are disqualified, we actually do a second round of review. And we actually then contact the students and ask them exactly that question. Has anything changed in our household circumstances? Did somebody die, or people got divorced, or people lost their jobs? And therefore we do that second round. So we don't just disqualify from the word go.
Okay. So I want you to just take a look at some of the other tweets, because you mentioned the issue of upfront payment. Zona saying, is it true that NSFAS will no longer be paying students who live in non-accredited accommodation? This was also another thing, something that we saw in the past year or two. At this time, there were some students who were saying that they've not received funding from NSFAS for their accommodation, and the universities were also saying the money has been paid, but students are not using it properly. So what is happening with regards to the situation?
So that's not true. in fact, this Thursday coming, we're meeting with all the vice-chancellors to exactly assess how much of their accreditation or their residents have been accredited. Now, a private household can also be accredited by university, and then we'll make the call. But that is not true, because we can't, if there's no accredited accommodation, what do? You will then have to make sure that you have controls in place, that students provide you with the necessary lease agreement so that the money don't go wasted. The problem that we have with private arrangements is that sometimes the students don't pay their landlord, and then the landlord wants the money from NSFAS. So we have to make absolutely sure that that is very tight.
What are the requirements if you want to be accredited as a private accommodation for students?
We have established lists and rules and guidelines for people that want to go that route. And it can be obtained from the Department of Education. But in essence, the student must have a decent place to study. They must have decent electricity, they must have warm water, and they must, of course, have, in some cases, decent food, whatever the arrangement is. So there's clear guidelines laid out, and there's also guidelines laid out for people that are intending to become accredited but don't meet all the full requirements yet.
Dr. Carolissen, let's look at another tweet that's come through. Snentlantla saying, my application is still on the validation stage and registration starts on Wednesday. What can I do? I've never been this scared.
So, like I said, of the 550 that we received, we have approved 400,000 of new students. We have also approved 200,000 of returning students from universities because we got the data from the universities. So they approved. Now, in this particular case, where we have not approved, we're working tirelessly to get validation where people, say for instance, the ID documents do not correspond to what Department of Home Affairs have. Then we go directly into the Department of Home Affairs and ask to validate that, and social development. So that's the one side. And once we validate you, we don't ask you again to submit your ID documents because we've got the validation. And so we've cleared 60,000 records, or 60,000 students in that way. The 70,000 or so that's still outstanding is we are begging students to submit all their documentation because we can't do income validation without your consent.
Okay. Dr. Carolissen, you withdrew about 36,865 applications. Why?
It's because they, first of all, did not meet the criteria for funding. And secondly, we are also doing some form of audit where there's suspicious activity. And so those 36,000, oh, sorry, I thought you talked about the disqualified. The 36,000 were duplicates.
Okay. And missing documentation from what I saw.
35,000 of the 36,000 were duplicates, and they were withdrawn, therefore. And I think 1,000 had missing documents.
Okay. So let's look at another tweet that's coming through. John saying, my niece isn't on their system. We applied and she's already accepted. What can one do to ensure that she gets much needed funding?
So I need to understand when he says she's not on the system, because every person is encouraged to open up a personal portal for them at the point of registration. And then you go into your portal and all your details are there.
And as you said, that it should mark you as eligible.
It should mark as eligible or awaiting documents or whatever the status is on your portal.
Okay.
And the reason why the portal is important is because if we have all the students calling our call center, they won't get through. It's just too many students.
John, I hope you're watching that you're going to do that. There was a tweet earlier on saying that somebody who's applying at a TVET college is being asked for 1,000 Rand upfront. Should that be happening?
Should not be happening, and they should report that to us so that
how do you answer to somebody? Because obviously this is a desperate time for a lot of students who want to make sure that they get into an institution of higher learning. Some learn. In fact, if I remember correctly, let's see if we can find that tweet and put it up. I think the tweet suggested that some parents just don't know enough, and this is what I was saying, that if you're not acquainted with the system, it's very easy for you to get duped.
So first of all, the reason why I want them to report it, because there are a lot of scamsters out there that scam students and charge money to apply for them, though they should not be doing that. The second thing is in our outreach, we went very extensively into rural areas and to small towns. It is absolutely shocking how little people know about NSFAS and about the advantages of NSFAS. So we need to find different communication channels to get to poor students and vulnerable students. To make them aware. And so we have started a program with DBE last year to put it in the life orientation curriculum Obviously, that didn't work too well, so we have to step up on our program, on our efforts this year.
So let's talk about TVET applications. I'd imagine that you're expecting quite a few applications, given the fact that that registers a bit later than universities.
Well, what happened in the case of TVET, because everybody ticks university off as a first choice.
Yes.
And so when students don't get into university, then TVETs become the second one. So we have still large, it's a perennial problem, large walk-ins into the TVETs. And so we have geared up. In fact, the team is displaced all over the country at each campus to assist the TVET colleges that once they register a student and that student is NSFAS eligible, that we actually process that NSFAS application straight away to ensure a rapid turnaround. We hope that the number will be a lot less this year. But whilst South Africa and students have not recognized TVETs as also a destination of good choice, you know, we still will have the problem.
Dr. Carolissen, we do have that tweet coming up. Let's see if we can, there you go, it's from Zumu. That's what Zumu was saying. And you mentioned that there are a lot of scams. So perhaps just alert our viewers, what kind of scams are there that you can get caught up in this kind of
So that's
situation?
one of them, where students get charged to process the application fees, and then these kind of scams disappear. The other thing that scams also do is try to get the PIN numbers of portals of students and then go and change their details on the portal. You know, and so as we move into direct payments in banks, we're going to probably stop a lot of that type of activity, because when we pay directly to banks, the accounts will be held at the bank and not anywhere else. And so we have uncovered a number of these scams and we've handed them over to
So how do you protect your information so long?
Well, when we have a cell phone change, it's marked as a suspicious activity.
Okay.
Straight away. And
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for your time. NSFAS Administrator Dr. Randall Carolissen.